Hi everyone. So it's my first time, I think, speaking in France, right? So it's my first time here at the conferences because I always travel to Meet Magento conferences, but there is no Meet Magento before this one. So it's the first experience for me. Topic is quite interesting. There is a little bit of wrench in the presentation because I wanted to do a small demo on my laptop. So because the slides don't connect, at the end of the talk, I'm gonna just hang my laptop up and show you the demo then. My talk is very interesting from perspective, like a lot of people think 200 domain names in one Magento instance and $300. It's impossible, right? You would think like hosting is impossible to have like that. So let's start first of all with a little bit of introduction. A little bit about me. I would say that I have already 18 years of Magento experience, so my experience can drink with me in the bar somewhere here in France.
Good idea.
I was one of original 5 core developers who created Magento 1, so you can definitely blame me for a lot of issues you've had with it, right? I'm expert in optimizing everything, not only Magento. So I work with a lot of different businesses. I optimize Java applications. I write my own Rust microservices. I do a lot of stuff related to performance optimization. I really like building a low-level software that performs quite well. So that's why we have this $300. But the interesting thing is that $300, it's pure PHP and Magento, nothing more. No some exotic languages. I get hired a lot by agencies and merchants to put out fires in production, especially before Black Friday. I usually have like a waiting list before Black Friday for fixing stuff. Another thing, I'm very passionate about open source, and my passion with open source started with actually first my commits to Magento core. So that's basically when I started to be fan of Magento as a child of mine, you know, like to see it grow and evolve, and now it can drink with me some beer in a bar, right? So 10 years ago in the Netherlands, I had one of the customers coming over for me and telling me like, hey, I'd like a website like coolblue.nl. So anyone knows what is a Coolblue? Okay, so the Belgium guy knows, right? Because Coolblue also works in... Yeah, they are very nice service. So back in the day, like 10 years ago, the Coolblue business model was to have specific websites created for specific set of products. So let's say you wanted to buy a laptop, you would have laptopstore.nl. If you want to buy a hard drive or something, you would have computercomponents.nl, and so on. So you would have like a lot of different domains specific for specific sales channel. And you would have a shared shopping cart. And customer says like, oh, Coolblue is so big, I wanna have this number of domains. Look, I already bought 200 of them, right? So right now, on Mac, emojis look differently, but here was the Dutch flag. So right now, in 2024, Coolblue is number 3 in the Netherlands by the revenue share. Amazon is number 4. So Amazon still couldn't beat Coolblue in the size of the Dutch market. Back in 2014, when I was working with a customer, they were only like 360 million yearly revenue. Now they're 2.4 billion. They have right now 437 developers out of their technical team, and 5,007,000 total headcount of the company. So I'm thinking like, hey, can I really achieve it with Magento as a single developer, you know, like to do something like that? While Coolblue has this huge team of technical experts, and I said like, okay, let me try to play around with Magento and see what's gonna happen. So here's a link to the screenshot. After the presentation, you will be able to access the slides later if you'd like to look at it. So the only problem was the customer told me, okay, I have only this budget for monthly expenses on my Magento store. So I was a little bit in a pickle, right? Okay, what I'm gonna do there? I had very limited resources, so only like 4 CPUs available for my PHP processes, right, to process stuff. I had only 8 gigs of RAM and only 70 gigs SSD. However, they didn't have too many products, but enough, right? So they had good catalog, spread out quite well. Here is a screenshot from 2016 because right now Hypernode doesn't offer this plan anymore. Right now it's all over 1,000, but at that time it was like one of the entry points. So one of the requirements I had for a merchant, like, okay, each domain should have own category structure, right? Because we want to have separate category tree for internal components, separate category tree for laptops, and so on for each of the type of products they sell. So here is an example also that some product can be actually shared between domains. So I don't want to have to create separate products for one laptops for study and one for laptops for home. I can share the same laptop between 2 domains. I can sell them on both instances. Also, each domain should have own homepage and logo to have like unique experience. So imagine like you're going into some electronics store and you have aisles where it specifies which products are there, and you have special sales assistants that can help you find the right product for you, who is specialized. So homepage for those stores was this kind of assistant that was showing, hey, what are current new things on the market that you can buy, what kind of the best products for these specific needs you have, and so on. And another thing that was very complicated to implement, especially 10 years ago. Now it's a little bit easier to do, to have a shared shopping cart between all of those 200 domains. Especially, I spent at least 1 week debugging why Safari was not storing cookies for me, right? Because I had different domain names, I needed to share stuff. Then I realized, okay, I actually need to redirect the customer to that domain before I can set a cookie, because Safari was very crazy about privacy. So if you didn't visit the website, it doesn't allow you to set the domain name. Now I don't know what to do with that knowledge, and you don't know too. So first, let's take a look with the started Magento way. Right, you would think right out of the box, you create a lot of websites. You have separate websites for each separate set of products, then you assign those products to those websites, and you repeat it like 200 times. Do you have to do it? Yeah, otherwise you wouldn't come to the talk. You would just create those websites. So the thing is, actually, there is some major drawbacks of this, right? So first of all, before 2.2 Magento version, we would have blown up in single index table sizes, right? Because Magento didn't have segmentation by scopes. Now Magento has this kind of functionality. Another thing that after 2.2, there is another problem. Now we have too many tables, right? So before we had everything in one table, now we have too many tables. And then we would have to have a very powerful MySQL server to keep every single index of the table in memory to quickly look up the data. So another thing is, of course, extra long indexation time. You can imagine if you multiply all the products by all the websites, how much time it would take to index stuff. Another thing is MySQL memory buffers usage, right? As I mentioned, you would have to have a lot of stuff if you go with this approach. And another thing that is probably quite interesting from perspective of the business, you would have a lot of data duplication, right? Because you would have to enter the data for products in every single website. And you would have manually to assign a product to every single website. And I don't envy merchants who had to do it with multilingual setups where they have to switch drop-down for every product to decide on which stores they do. So that's why we have PIMs. But this merchant said, like, no, I'm actually going to manage products myself. So I needed to find a different solution. Another thing that a lot of people don't know is if you have too many domains, and in this case, I have actually too many of them because I also want to cover WW. case as well. So basically it's 200 multiplied by 2, so 400 domain names. You might run into issues with memory of Nginx. So you would have to adjust the hash max size, bucket sizes, and honestly, like, it's a lot of guessing, so I don't want to do that either, right? So yeah, too many things to try out, because Nginx, when it loads the configuration files, it tries to find the perfect hash map. And finding the perfect hash map is going to be a CPU-intensive process. So adding a new domain is kind of a gamble of putting all your website down for some time. So let's step back for a second. Let's think, hey, let's ask ourselves, right, do we need multiple websites? Actually, we don't. Do we need multiple store groups? Sort of, maybe, but probably we can live without them either, right? Do we need multiple store views? Not at all. So there's actually a better way to think about it, because Magento already has a thing that helps you to segment catalog like that. We call them categories, right? So what if we just have single website, single store group, single store view, and then we have just different first-level categories that be treated as these separate domain names. And then we don't need to duplicate data, because we can just assign product to that category, and magic happens, product is visible. We don't need to enter a lot of data there. And on top of that, so when we have the structure, we need to create a new entity, just 2 tables, domain scope and domain. Why there is 2 tables, why not 1? Because at some point, customer came to me and said, like, oh, I actually want to expand into Belgium, so I need to have French language available on my website, so I need to have actually 1 more store view. And if I would done it the Magento way, at that point I would say, you know, like, I don't want to create 200 more store views for that. So, okay, I've did that, and we created 2 tables, and then during the runtime, I look up what kind of a domain is available, right? So let's step back. So I can look up which domain name is available, and by domain name, I know which store ID to point to, and I know which category ID to use. I also can override some data with config field, and I can also apply some filters on catalog on top of it. Let's say if I want to create a combination of a website where I have category 3 plus a brand. So let's say I want to create Intel CPU's website, right? I don't need to create a separate category 3 for Intel. I can just filter my current product set by Intel brand. And here's the thing, like, why it's actually better. Category trees can be shared. They don't take more space. They're kind of very well segmented. Magento can support a lot of categories. It works quite well. And there is no duplication of index data, because we have 1 single index table, very easy to look up, very easy to narrow down the product result set. Smaller MySQL database size, because we don't need to duplicate EAV data per store, right? We have instant domain addition, so if I want to create a new store, I just create a record in this domain table, and I don't need to run any reindexations. It will automatically be picked up on the front end. Another thing, it's also easier to manage products, so merchants don't need to switch in a lot of store views, only when they need to change the language. And a little bit of boring stuff, how actually it was achieved, and hopefully I can show you a demo of this project working on actual Magento 2 instance. So a little bit of boring stuff from customizations. First of all, I need to create a plugin that takes precedence over the core plugin. So I need to add a higher sort order in order to detect what domain we are on, to know which configuration options to override and which store view we're going to use, and how to modify the request parameters. Then I can override this 1 single method called getRootCategoryID, and Magento will automatically start adding it to every single query where it relies on root category ID. Another thing, scope config interface get value. I also can check which configuration value by pass needs to be overridden, and I can just return a custom value on after plugin. Another customization is kind of override of get category tree, because unfortunately Magento doesn't allow me to change the collection there, so I have to override a class and replace the protected method. Because Magento has actually a performance issue over there, because Magento uses 2% signs for category path. So basically it's very slow database query. So I replace it with actual full path of the root category to find all the child categories. Another thing is an adapter interface for Elasticsearch. So if I want to add additional parameters like brand, or let's say if I'm on a search page, I don't want to have all products visible. I want them to be filtered by specific category, so I modify it with the plugin in that sense. And the last one is when I hit a Magento URL, Magento needs to find the actual page to resolve this URL to. And because I have this one level category, I have this prefix URL of every single one level category. And during building of the URL, I try to remove this prefix completely, so I need to add it when I look up the data back. And another one is get URL on the category model, so I trim this prefix of the current domain-specific logic. So a little bit of demo time, but not sure how it's easy gonna be visible. So let me turn back to you. Unfortunately, no, because it's made for Windows and Macs, okay. And I have a Linux, so you know, I like open source, right? So the first thing that we're gonna do, we're gonna start my environment. Let's see, up. I also created this file. Let me make it a little bit bigger. So and here I have this domains.txt. There is a lot of domain names. There is 200 of them. Let me pick something here like memory cards. Control-Shift-C, and let's put it here. So first of all, let's open the standard Magento store, the home page without any domain name. You see my menu is broken because there is too many categories there. So there is no domain name applied. But I can change it to include, this time it's memory cards. So let's see what kind of categories we see here. Okay, micro SD cards, picture cards, memory stick cards, and I can go into category, and I'm gonna see those specific products available, right? So I don't need to create multiple store views to limit view of the page. I can really make it quite nice. So short demo, not gonna do too much in details because it's gonna be hard to show it on the laptop. You can catch me later to have it and play around with it. So another thing, I have put a little bit of a challenge for myself. There is some guys, I think, here from Hosted Power, right? So I'm gonna put a little bit of a challenge, and by April 1st, so next week, I want to release an instance that's gonna be available on April 1st. It's not gonna be a joke, because Magento is no joke, right? It's gonna run on 3 CPUs, only 8 gigs of RAM, and 100 gigs of SSD. I'm not gonna need this amount of SSD space, but that's the tiers that they have. It's gonna be available at domain200.fr. So next week, make sure to check that website, and it's gonna have the same demo that I have on my machine running, and it's gonna be running on this instance with this amount of memory and this amount of CPU. I also gonna do a small post on LinkedIn with actual performance numbers, because I'm gonna run a load test beforehand to see how it actually performs under load and to see how much actually you can squeeze out of Magento out of the box, right? So it's powered by hosted power, thanks them for providing an instance for me for testing. I think it's a good indication to say, okay, maybe Magento can run below 300 euros. Maybe we can do it below 200 euros a month. And I think it's a good thing to show that you don't need to have huge hosting budget to run your applications. You just need to think outside of the box. So thank you very much. Here are the URLs with the slide where you can find also the link itself. There is also my email in case you need to put out fire in production before Black Friday. And the URL to the slides itself. And you're free to catch me during the coffee break if you want to see a demo in person. Yes?
I have a question. You do speak about NGX after because you configure on Magento side, but on the one part you go to NGX part to know the domain. So how does it work about that part?
Yeah, so in that case, instead of looking up stuff in Nginx map, right, I just created a database query to find the right store view for specific host name, right? It's much more easier for me to do than do it on Nginx part.
But for NGX, so NGX you have like a white card?
It's just default server. So basically there is no specific host name match. It's automatically at runtime resolved by Magento. So I would wish Magento always did it by default. Like, why do you need to specify store code if you already know what is the domain name of that specific store view, right? It would be much more nicer from user perspective to not have to spend this much time on hosting configuration. Yes?
Ivan, you mentioned that one of the promises not only the category tree, but also potential customization in terms of the layout. Does that get stored in that JSON config?
Yeah, so the JSON config itself is kind of an associative object, right, where you specify the key configuration path and you specify a value. So at the runtime in Magento, you can replace any configuration value to whatever you like. And based on domain name, you can substitute and let's say, okay, for CMS homepage, I'm going to use this page ID instead of the original one. And in general, if you start thinking about, okay, how can I duplicate my data and thinking how can I customize my runtime, it's going to be much more easier for you to deal with projects. Yes?
How do you manage the translations?
Yeah, the store ID. So for translations, it's the only way. I did some proposal back in 2017 when I was doing short consulting gig with Magento team itself. Let's say coming back to the roots. And I was telling them like, okay, we need to solve the problem with data duplication with store views. And maybe we need to create a new scopes and so on. But unfortunately, it's all backward compatibility talk, right? So you cannot break stuff. But some of the solutions I find, let's say you have 20 different countries you sell at, right? And you have only, let's say, 10 languages available. So you don't want to duplicate the product data over those, all of those countries. What you can do, you can write a small customizations in Magento where you can say this store view is an alias of another store view. And during the runtime, when you try to fetch product data, you just replace the store view inside of Magento query. Yes?
Did you have to generate all the URL rewrites?
So that's the point with stripping the prefix path during the runtime. So I don't generate the URL rewrites for every single domain name. I basically strip the first part of the URL when I output the URL, and then I add it in if the original URL is not found by Magento. Yes?
You didn't talk about the sitemap?
That's that's a problem. Yeah, it would require a little bit of customizations, but just writing, you know, like a couple of customizations where I just walk through all domain names and all the categories with those domain names and generate those URLs. So let's say instead of generating the final URL of a category, I can replace it with a URL of the domain to which this category is assigned. If there is more categories, then I would choose one that's going to be canonical URL because I also don't want to have data duplication in Google, right?
One last question. So all the websites have the same templates or no?
Technically, you can do a different theme. If you want to invest development time in building separate design for every of those domains, you can do it. You can just modify. I forgot exactly the name out of memory, but I think it was web design package theme something. So you can modify this configuration value for each of the domains. Or you can only do it for some domains. Let's say if you want to sell Apple products, you want to have look and feel of Apple products on your website as well. So you would create a separate theme for that. And the rest of them can fall back to default one.
And one last thing, for them, they continue to have this 200 website or it's finished? Like they just have Coolblue or they still have this?
Yeah, so the thing is with Coolblue itself, the Coolblue switched as soon as they get recognized in the Netherlands, right? So now, before that, people were Googling, hey, find me best laptops for studying or best products for that or this. And that's how Coolblue got all the discovery, right, of visitors, because they had very good SEO with this model. But after time, everyone in the Netherlands knows Coolblue, so everyone just goes to Coolblue and searches for products. So they, I think, abandoned it in 2018, something like that, this model, and they switched completely to one single website where they have just categories. And for that customer, unfortunately, that customer from the Netherlands, like building on this tight budget means that they didn't have bigger budget for marketing. And marketing is basically lifeline of your business. So if you don't put enough money into marketing, your business wouldn't survive. So unfortunately, that Dutch customer went bankrupt. But it's a good story to tell what actually is possible when you put yourself into limits like that. Okay, I'm not gonna take more of your time. Enjoy coffee and catch me later.